Hey guys, I just put together this video for y'all with some additional instructions for my Crochet Hands pattern. Today I am going to be working with some cotton yarn just so you can more easily see the stitches. And I will normally use a worsted weight acrylic yarn. I've gotten a few questions from you all, so today I want to talk about hook size and yarn size and things like that and cover some general questions. So first things first, I'm just going to start off making the fingers so that I have a good visual representation of what I'm doing. And I will start by making the pinky finger, which is the smallest finger. We're going to start with a magic circle and a single crochet to hold that in place. And I will always pull the back string to make sure that it's nice and tight, and also with the first working stitch, the first working single crochet, I want to be sure to give myself some wiggle room. I don't want this first stitch to be too tight, so just kind of let it out just a little bit so that it's nice and loose. You want that looser than you would your other stitches. It just makes it easier to work in the second row. Here I just want to make sure that I've got all 5 stitches. I always double check. And then I'll pull the tail on my magic circle tight, and you will see here that the stitches are going to want to push to one side and make almost like a cup or a bowl. And you want to just go with that and push the stitches together to make it easier on yourself. That's just going to make it much easier to work into the next row. And then I always use a stitch marker in the last stitch of the row and a row counter to keep track of where I am. And oops, that's upside down, so make sure your row counter is right side up. Okay, moving on. And you can see that this first stitch is nice and easy to work into because I left it nice and loose. But then the rest of the stitches I always keep very tight, especially at the tips of the fingers. You want to keep all of your stitches tight so that you're not seeing any stuffing or having the fingertips loosen and open up. I'll just continue on here working around for 7 rows to make this first little finger. And I always use my stitch marker in the last stitch of the row. That's just purely preference. I find that it helps to remind me to change my row counter so that I don't lose track of where I am, because I do not possess that superpower of being able to just look at a project and know how many rows there are. And you really want to mind that tail. You want to make sure you're not grabbing that. We do want that tail a little bit longer than the finger will be because we're going to use that to secure the magic circle. So you want to be able to have the ability to pull on that after you're done making your finger. And we're also going to use it to stuff the finger. And then that brings me to another piece of advice that I wanted to share today. I had someone reach out and ask about the spaces between stitches and how to make sure you're not seeing the stuffing. And that is to make sure that you're keeping really tight tension. If you are using a light worsted or a DK yarn, which you'll see that little yarn symbol with the number 3 on your skein, I will usually use a 3.25 or 3.125 millimeter, also known as a D or a number 3 hook, and that usually works really well for me. If that isn't doing it, you just need to use a smaller hook. So here I just wanted to show you guys when we were finishing the 7th row on the pinky finger, we'll do our final single crochet and then a chain 1. And you want to leave yourself about a 6 to 8 inch tail, and that gives you a good amount to use for stuffing the finger after the fingers are put together. And then I always grab that inner tail and I pull really, really tightly. So right here, you'll see that there's still kind of an opening at the tip of the finger. I'm just going to pull on that and it's going to close that all the way up. And I want to pull that tightly to secure it before I stuff this into the finger. And one little trick that I use is to just twist this tail up until it twists and folds onto itself. And that helps to lock that yarn in place and just offers that much more security for the tip of the finger and also for not having any stuffing show through your stitches. And you can also use scrap yarn for this. You just want to use a corresponding color. So I could use any dark purple scraps that I have to stuff the fingers. You just want to make sure you're getting it stuffed all the way down into the very tip of the finger, and that will ensure that it keeps its shape. And you can use whatever you regularly use to stuff your projects. I use crochet needles. You could use a chopstick or the little stick that comes with your polyfill. And again, I just keep twisting it up, and that helps too to get it to the point where you can stuff it. Sometimes it's stubborn. Just take your time and make sure that it's all the way to the tip of the finger. And that looks good. And we'll stuff the other tail in there after I do at least one round on the palm before I add the thumb. It's just easier to do that later on. So now I'll just restart my counter and start on the next finger. And again, I'm going to start with a magic circle with that first single crochet to lock in my magic circle. I always just consider that as part of the magic circle. And then I always pull that back string to make sure it's nice and tight on the magic circle. And then again, leave that first stitch nice and loose. And for this finger, we're doing 6 stitches instead of 5. Magic circle closed. And again, you want to push those stitches over or to the side to form that little bowl. Put that where you can see it. Yeah, just push these over and make sure that you're giving yourself that little bit of extra help going into the next row, because these little fingers are sometimes hard to work into as you're working these up. So I will just continue working up all 4 of these fingers, and then I have a couple more tips that I can share with you after or once we start putting them together. I just wanted to show you, you can see from the indentation on my finger that I am keeping very tight tension on my yarn. I will wrap it around my pinky like this, and if I'm using a smaller thread, sometimes I'll be using an embroidery thread, I will wrap that around my pinky 2, 3, even 4 times just to make sure that it's nice and tight. And then you will also never see me crochet without my trusty hook holder. This is an ergonomic hook holder made by Boy. Okay, moving on here. When you start connecting your fingers, you want to start with a slip knot. And then you want to go into the next working stitch. So right after this last stitch, we're going to go into the next stitch. You're going to grab your slip knot. You're going to pull your new thread through, chain one to lock that in, and then you're going to chain one more to start off. That will be technically your first stitch. And we're going to go into the next 2 stitches before we connect the next finger. 3 of the 4 fingers have 6 stitches, so when we're connecting them, we're going to work 3 stitches on each of the fingers for this first side. So you go in here, I'm going to make sure you move your tail out of the way. We're going to do this first single crochet to connect them, and then 2 more single crochets before we move on to the next finger. And then again, you just want to start on the next stitch after where you left off. Move your tail out of the way. Do this first single crochet to connect. And then 2 more. Now when we get to the pinky, there are 5 stitches. So we're just going to go all the way around. So 5 stitches in this one instead of the 3 that we did in the other ones. We're just going to go all the way around to the last stitch that we put in when we were making the finger. And at this point, this is where I have another little trick that I use on my hands, which I had a hard time explaining, so I just didn't include it in the pattern. But here we've got this side all connected. Now we're going to be working along this side to connect these fingers on this side. So the first thing you want to do is check out this stitch where you did your last single crochet while making this finger before you did the chain one to fasten off. I want you to notice that the front of this stitch here, you're going to grab that as you connect to the next finger, and that's going to help close the gap that will be between the fingers. Just insert there and then insert into the next stitch. Pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 of these stitches. And I have found that helps shrink that gap. And there's going to be a small gap no matter what, but this makes it a lot smaller. I have not had any issues with stuffing coming out or anything like that, but it does look better. And you can always come back and sew those shut if it bothers you or if you're worried about it, but that's the only way that I know of to fully close those gaps is to sew them. Grab this front loop and then go into the next finger. And go through all 3 and then do your remaining 2 stitches here. Then we will connect back to the first stitch that we made that chain one. We're going to go into the front loop of that, single crochet, and then pull it around here to this first stitch. And that that is the first row of the hand. And again, there's still a small hole here, but once you position your fingers, you get everything put together, it's not gonna matter. Okay, and then the last tip that I have to share with you guys today is to stuff these tails into the fingers so that you can get them out of your way and finish on with the palm of the hand. So just like before, I'm going to make sure that I just have the tails and I don't have my working yarn. You want to grab whichever string corresponds with each finger, and you're just going to twist it and twist it and twist it until they twist onto themselves. You don't have to twist these, but I like to do this. I think that it helps when I go to stuff it into the finger. It makes it easier for me. This is going to help add a little bit of stability to the fingers too. And I'm going to end up using some polyfill to finish stuffing the fingers and the palm of the hand. But again, this will help prevent any show through in the fingers, because the fingers are going to be bending. So that's the most vulnerable point when you're thinking about that stuffing showing through. And I still want to stuff them nice and tight so that I can bend the fingers. And I know nothing's going to be showing through those stitches. And there you go, you can't see anything but purple. I'll just continue on here, just twisting these up. Stuffing them in to get them out of the way. And at this point you can also use yarn scraps. If you have yarn scraps, you would just want to use a corresponding color. I could use any dark purple yarn to stuff these fingers, and that would work just fine. It's a great way to get rid of your scrap stash. And I'll just do this last one here. That's really it for today. I think that I've answered most of the questions that I've gotten. If you had a question that was not answered here today, please put it down in the comments. I am more than happy to do this again and answer any questions or to offer advice. I have really enjoyed sharing this pattern, and the response that I've gotten is just awesome from this simple little hand. And I have gotten so much joy from making these and gifting them. They are so much fun. They're relatively easy to make. They work up pretty quickly and they don't use that much yarn. So again, they're a great way to use up your scrap stash, and they're fun. So I hope that these little hands have brought you some joy. And again, if you have any other questions for me, pop them into the comments, and I hope you enjoy making these little hands, and thank you for joining me today. And as I always say, happy crocheting. Bye guys.